Hi, welcome to the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. My name is Michele Hartwig, and I am the owner and race director at Ornery Mule Racing here in Crystal Lake, Illinois. We put on races in Illinois and Wisconsin.
Awesome. And I'm Caleb Stevens. I'm one of the coaches for Ornery Mule coaching and also do social media work with Ornery Mule. This year I'll be running Cocodona 250, which has been quite the challenge of preparing for and whatnot. But fortunately, one of our other coaches through Ornery Mule coaching, Katie O'Connor, has previous 200 miler experience. In 2023, she ran Bigfoot 200, and she's going to be joining us today to talk about her experience, what it was like to get ready for that event, what the race week was like, and then share some of the lessons and things that she learned along the way. So we're super excited to have Katie here this morning. Morning, Katie.
Morning. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah.
Good
Awesome.
morning,
So,
Katie.
yeah.
Morning.
So Bigfoot 200, 2023 was your first 200 miler. Like, what made you want to run a 200 miler? And like, what was that decision making process like for you and getting to that point where you clicked sign up?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. So it was like two separate events. So no joke, I literally woke up one Friday morning in a panic. Like it was like earlier than the alarm, and I was just like, oh my God, where's my stuff? Like, where's my pack? And my husband is like, what are you talking about? I dreamt that I was like napping in a 200 out of the blue. And so I'm like, and I just could not shake this thought all day. He's like, it's just a normal Friday, like relax. But I was literally in this panic of like looking for my stuff around my bed and all this. And then the whole day I could not shake the thought of a 200. And my coach had run a 200 before. And I'm like, no way, like never have I ever finished 100 and thought, yeah, I want to do 100 more. Right. But this dream kind of like put this idea in my head. And then Bigfoot was literally going off like that weekend. So then I started just like stalking the social media, seeing the pictures, and the pictures, like the scenery drew me in. Like it was just so gorgeous and so incredible. And it was right on the time where my coach was like, you really need to kind of think about what you want as your goal for the next year. And I knew I wanted to kind of take a break from kettle because I sometimes get into the habit of, I love races. I'm just going to keep going back and doing them. And so I kind of was like dragging my feet on telling her what I wanted to do, and just shot her a text and was like, hey, I know I said never, but we should all know better to say never as ultra runners, right? I'm like, what about a 200? And she's like, I think we could get you ready in like another year. Okay, so I take that knowledge, I put it in the back of my brain, and I register for the lottery for Bigfoot. So then it was just like letting fate take its course. But to be fair, even rewind before this dream, I don't think so the prior year I'd run kettle, and I just had one of those years that was like all the stars were aligned. I went into it finally with like enough, I felt like experience under my belt where I could just be like, let's not have any fear. Let's just see what I can do. If I just literally run, knowing that my coach had kind of written me a little thing, and she was like, remember, you're able and you're capable. And it was like two such simple words, but it like carried me throughout all of kettle. And then I ended up coming in under 24 hours, which I never thought was possible. Like never on a hilly course did I think that was possible for me. And I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, because I got under 24 hours, but I think it was because I ran the whole day into the night, into the next day, right? With just like this, don't freak out if you're running too fast. If maybe this is what you're supposed to be doing. Like I think I kept running other hundreds with more fear. And this was just like, trust myself, leave it all out there, and just keep reminding myself I'm able and capable. And then like seeing that was the result, I think gave me that power of like, what can't I do if those are the two things I'm going to believe with my heart of hearts that I can, if I'm running able and capable, what can't I do? So I think if I hadn't had that experience, it might have been harder to push the buttons to sign up for the lottery.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you got that email that said that you made it, what did that feel like?
It was incredible. I remember I just finished a run. I came back and I'm stalking my email. I'm just refreshing Gmail like crazy. And it says like, congratulations, you're the class of 2023 Bigfoot. And I was like excited and also like, oh my God,
Yeah.
it's real. What have I gotten myself into? Because I really didn't think I'd get in the first try. Like I know getting into the 200s isn't like trying to get into Western states, but I'm not a lottery winner. I don't have luck like that. So I didn't think I'd get in on the first shot either. But I was excited. I was just like, I love learning. And so I was like, this is going to be a whole year of just like learning this new sport. And I just like, the second I got in, I texted my coach too and was like, hope you're not mad. Hope we can be ready in a year and not two. She was super stoked and was like, totally, we can get you ready. And yeah, from that day on, it was just like, how much can I deep dive into this new world of 200s and how much can I learn between, September of 22 to August of 23?
Did you have a moment when you got that email where you were like, you had that really excited and then holy cow, like where it just like hits you like a wave? Because I had that. It was just like, I did it.
Right?
And then I was like, I did it. And then you're like, I did it. And
Yes.
it's like, you're like, oh my gosh, I did it. And it was like this whole arch, right? Like, do you experience
Totally.
that?
Yeah. The whole spectrum of emotion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because you're just like, uh-oh. And I told like my crew, like my closest confidants, right, of like what I like, oh, guys, I signed up for the lottery. So it was like enough people knew in my, my like little sphere too. So it's like, well, now I have to share with them that I got in. So then it becomes even more real as like people know. So yeah, definitely had the same wave of emotion.
I know that you're really great about piling information together. um, where did you start? Like, what was important for you to have ready to come to the race?
Yeah, I mean, so I printed out the race manual like immediately and just like cruised through it several times. And then really just deep dove into anything I could find. So first I like read any race recaps I could from Bigfoot specifically. And thankfully there was a woman, I'm gonna blank on her name now, but she is a Midwest gal and she'd run Kettle and Ice Age. And so I read her recap, which I felt was just like super critical because it was like a girl who's training in my same areas has gone out and done it. So I read hers, read any other recap I could find. And then any run I was on, I was just like, well, we're going to start listening to a ton of podcasts. So I listened to like every Bigfoot podcast, watched, even I was on the treadmill, watched every YouTube video on Bigfoot to truly try to get like a sense of like section to section what this was going to look like really try to read it, like read what people's experiences were like, and then be able to see it on some of these videos. And I'm sure Kaleb, you've seen a lot of West Plates info. So his this one racer does like these amazing GoPro videos of these courses, and so I studied his video. And then sadly there's not like as many videos on Bigfoot, so once I kind of got through those, then I just tackled, I was like, I'm going to listen and read everything on any 200 that's out there, because it's like it's still kind of a similar beast, it's just a different course. So that was kind of how I started tackling it. And then I would just kind of make notes of like questions I had either for my coach or similar to Cocadonia, like Facebook has a Bigfoot group, so I would just well, and Michelle, I asked a bunch of questions before my first kettle. Same went for this. I mean, and I feel like the community around these 200s is so incredible with like, I would just blast out any sort of question. And then, you have 15 responses immediately of people that, right, have been in your shoes before, they've already learned it and they want to share that knowledge. So between kind of, like the podcasts and the videos, and then the Facebook group, being able to ask questions to people who had previously done the race, those things were all like invaluable with just kind of like prepping, getting information, recon the gear you need, all that sort of stuff.
For
Yeah,
me,
so
I'm getting ready to crew Kaleb for Cocodona 250.
Yay! Oh, I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yes.
Yeah, I'm super excited. And and I know you brought a crew out there. Like, what advice do you have for me getting ready for that? What did you tell your crew? Like, how can you help us get ready to crew Kaleb to a great finish?
Yeah, I think it's knowing what Kaleb's goals are first and foremost. For all I'm lucky to have had the same kind of, like I was saying, core people for all the bigger races. And so they know like my biggest goal is I want to get to that finish with a smile on my face. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy the journey. And then secondly, for me becomes like a time goal, like I kind of had, and with the first of anything, it was a rough goal. Like my coach was looking at it and she's like, this seems possible. I think you can maybe finish faster, but so many days, so many things can happen. So my crew knew, like this was the A goal. Like I want to have fun out there. This has taken a year of time to prep. So kind of really spelling out my goals to them, and two, telling them too, like, do not let me come in with any little reason why I don't want to keep going. Like medics will have to pull me for me to not keep going, or I'm gonna have to miss a cutoff. Like we all didn't come this far for me to feel like, oh, I've got a blister, my feet hurt. Like that's gonna happen. So I really let them know, like, no matter what state I come in, give me some. I've heard that it was like the 3 C's before you, make a big decision, right? You should have caffeine, some calories, and I think they called it like a cat nap, So I was like, don't make any drastic decisions unless you've had those 3. So I really let them know all that. And then, because I'm kind of an over planner, I made a binder
Oh, nice.
of just like the course breakdown, section to section, kind of what it looked like. So not only for them to kind of be able to prep me, but for them to be able to prep the pacer I had coming in for me. And then I just had notes for each aid station. Like, okay, this aid station is going to be coming off of a water crossing, so I'm going to want to change my shoes. This one, I'm hoping to come in at the nighttime. I want to go to bed. So like before I go to sleep, this is the things I want to do. So I kind of, I had kind of like the overall course and like the outline of the profile and all that. And then I just had like a tab for each kind of, section, right? Because it's just like you kind of chunk this beast down into sections. And so, it's like maybe, Kaleb, for you, right, that first 50K is supposed to be just such a beast. So it's like, okay, after that, maybe I want to take a little bit extra time at that aid station to like rehydrate, fuel, check my feet. And kind of even going smaller from aid station to aid station, I just had a checklist for myself in each drop bag of like, these are the things you want to make sure you do. So it kind of helped me, one, not have to remember it all, and 2, be really methodical. Like, so everything just becomes like second nature. And I practiced kind of that list in a couple of my long runs leading up to it. Like I would have my car as my pretend aid station and just come in and be like, okay, I'm going to, change my socks, take care of my feet, all the things I wanted to kind of do at one of those aid stations, just to kind of have it be super second nature. So I think kind of having that binder was helpful for my crew. And then my crew actually made their own binder of just old school, like printed out Google directions. I think Cocodonia's service is a bit better for, for cell service and stuff. But for like Bigfoot, we had no, like as soon as we started, there was no cell service. So they felt better having printed out directions for aid station to aid station. So that might be helpful just, in case you have some sort of like service isn't great, you're not worried about like, oh gosh, where am I going to turn? So I think the goals, kind of like how you want your aid station set up to flow, Kaleb, and then those directions of just like getting everywhere, seem to make my crew's life a lot easier. And they also kind of my crew chief kind of planned out when I was sleeping, like vehicles, right? Like it's like hard to kind of, like if you're gonna have a couple cars, like, okay, who's gonna be sleeping where, when? So she kind of had this timeline of like, okay, if Katie's roughly gonna be here, there, she needs to sleep here. And then her pacer needs to sleep after she comes in. So she kind of had like a sleep schedule for everybody so that it wasn't like, where is everyone gonna sleep in the car? And obviously, right, things can change, but they felt comfort knowing like, okay, this is kind of like roughly, if things are going to plan, where things are gonna shake out for sleep and eating and all that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, how did you have did you have one vehicle or multiple?
We started with 2, because like the start of Bigfoot, it's almost impossible for one car to get, like, for some reason the first day you're not that far, but to drive it you have to go like all the way around a mountain. So we had 2 the first day to kind of split up, and then just because there was nowhere to dump the cars, we kept with the 2. And honestly, that worked kind of nice because it was like, one vehicle was kind of like the sleep vehicle, and like pacer prep vehicle, and the other vehicle was just like, making sure that everyone was able to get to and from. So we kind of had like a crew runner vehicle, and then one that was just kind of the extra stuff car.
Okay. And then like with all of your gear and nutrition and everything, like what was your process within the vehicle to have things organized and easy to find?
Yeah, so I've never really relied on drop bags a ton because I've been lucky to have my crew at races local, right? But for this, I was like, I'm not going to leave things to chance. So I pretty much put all my personal like refuel in my drop bags. And I just had the same drop bag essentially for every spot. I had like all my nutrition in there. I had my, I used Scratch. I had like my Scratch powder in there already measured. And so my crew, if it was a crew available station, they would go get my bag and then just pretty much they
Interesting.
knew where everything would be in my, like, kind of the night before the race, we went through like where everything goes in my pack. And so I had like two people designated to just kind of take out trash, reload water, reload bladder, and do all that. But I had everything, like, God forbid they didn't make it, I had everything I needed in that drop bag, essentially. So for in the crew vehicle, I pretty much just had extra clothes. I didn't put any clothes in the drop bags because I knew I was carrying the like all the required gear. So if I got in a situation where like my crew wasn't there, I knew I was still covered. But like to change out shorts, shirt, that sort of stuff, that was all in the vehicle. And then just like they had some extra food for me that wasn't maybe, shelf stable to keep in the drop bag and might not have been at the aid station, just so some basics that I kind of like there. But that was kind of how we kind of flowed, was like they would grab my drop bag that had everything in it. And I just use those big, like they're the extra large Ziplocs.
Yep.
Those seem to work really great. And then, yeah, in there, I just had kind of a list of what I wanted to get done in that aid station. And so if they were there, they would get all that kind of laid out for me and reload my pack for me.
Sure.
You have such a great plan put together, but race day, we know like things happen. How did it go and how did you adjust? Did you have to adjust anything or did it go pretty well according to plan?
It thankfully went close enough to plan where I could, because I think my biggest fear was like, I don't nap. When Gwen was a baby, I didn't nap. I don't nap now. I just don't. So I was worried about the sleep. And I'm a girl that likes my sleep. So I was like, uh-oh. But luckily I got to the spots where I was hoping to sleep at night. And then I just bought one of those like blackout eye masks. And I'd throw in my AirPods, put them on, noise canceling. And I usually sleep with like ocean noises at home. So I just put ocean noises in my ears. And I think having it be dark, having that sound in, trying to recreate how I sleep at home helped me sleep there. So that was kind of like the one thing that I was really worried about. But I think having those couple of things, like even if you end up coming in and having to sleep when the sun is up, like trying to pretend like it's dark was helpful. I think the biggest thing that kind of threw us off our plan was it got really hot, like abnormally. It was in the hundreds for the last like 3 days during the day. So I was blowing through water way faster than I was planning on it. So there was a couple aid stations I came in and just needed to take an hour because I'd been without water for like 4 or 5 miles. So it's just like there's no point in rushing out of here. I kind of got to rehydrate, refuel. So take that. So it's kind of just more like more time at aid stations ended up happening because of the weather. But thankfully, knock on wood, everything else kind of went mostly roughly where I thought I would come in. I was kind of targeting those paces and those times. So yeah, I think it was really just the weather that threw us for a loop. And then, I mean, thankfully my crew was really on like getting to all the aid stations like well ahead of time once we kind of got through that first day of crazy driving. So they were kind of already set up for me to kind of get in and out. And yeah, I practiced. I think the other thing that I kind of didn't realize was going to take more time, that I would probably say, like, if you can practice, Caleb, like I knew my own foot care, but there was some things I just didn't pre-cut for myself probably enough. So I ended up waiting for the medics to like retape my heel because I just didn't have that tape with me at that aid station. So those little things, like the things that you could probably take care of yourself. I feel like I lost a little bit of time just because I ended up waiting for the medic. But also too, maybe it was like maybe the medic makes you feel better because they're like, oh, your feet look great, whether they do or not. But so those little things I think were the kind of schedule changers for me that I wasn't expecting, but also it wasn't anything tragic where I was like, oh God, this is really like a game changer as far as the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah. When you talk about like nutrition, I'm so used to like in 100 mile or anything less than that, right? It's all like, how do I get these calories in to keep moving? And it's all more like you're trying to fuel almost like a race car versus like you're out there for 5 days, right? And it's like you're eating hopefully a little bit more whole foods, especially earlier in the race, and trying to be a little bit more normal in terms of what you're consuming. Like, what did that look like for you? And were you able to eat solid foods throughout? And like when you went into an aid station, like what did that look like of you consuming food?
Yeah. So the first day I kind of treated it a little bit more like like a typical 100 miler, just ton of, right, you're supposed to carry these certain amount of calories anyways, but I was really trying to eat kind of, I'd practice with like 200 calories every hour. And so I just had, roughly enough things to get me from the start to the first aid station. And I would just eat every hour. And then that first aid station for us was a little weird because they had like the 20 miler and the 40 miler also going on. So a lot of the real food was kind of already gone, sadly, which again, I was like, that's okay. I have my drop bag with all my nutrition still in it for the next, get me to the next stretch, plus some, the backup emergency stuff. So I just kept eating that whole day, honestly, until I got to the second aid station, which was kind of around dinner time, eating just like I would for 100, probably a little bit more like protein fat based things, like an almond butter packet versus a spring gel. But I kind of ate like 100 miler the first day, just almost based on necessity. And then the first aid station I did, I sat down, I ate like a couple quesadillas, I think like a turkey wrap, and then I took a quesadilla to go. And so pretty much into that first night, ate again, just kind of like I think that quesadilla, I'd probably, like if I would eat like a real meal and I was keeping going versus sleeping, I'd probably let that take me a couple hours and just kind of gauge. Like from then on, it was like, do I feel hungry? If I haven't eaten in 2 hours, I'm gonna at least force down, like the spring awesome sauce was my like go-to if I just didn't feel like eating, but I knew I needed the calories, that became my go-to because it was just easy. And then pretty much once I got to that first day, then every aid station kind of tended to be a little bit more in that like 15 to 20 mile range with like a sleep then at night. So I would eat, like a big like breakfast burrito and then, maybe quesadilla and then another something. And then take, from then on I had a pacer. So like my pacer would hold whatever I was eating, like an extra of it, like a quesadilla or a wrap or pancakes or something, and then they would take that to go. And then it would kind of be that same cycle of like, they'd be like, oh, it's been 2 or 3 hours since you've had this meal. We should really, they'd be like, hey, do you want the quesadilla? And either I'd want it or I'd be like, no. And then I would go back to like the spring or like an almond butter packet. Pretty much from that, like day 2 on, that was kind of my routine. And the aid stations, I mean, I know at Cocodoni are supposed to be just like top notch. So what would usually happen if I was just coming in by myself is the aid station would come over, they'd ask you what you want, they'd prepare it and come. I mean, it's wild. It's like you feel like so pampered at these aid stations. Not to say the hundreds ones aren't, but it's wild to be like, no, you sit there. What can we get you? Do you want a cheeseburger? Do you want bacon? Do you want? I mean, it's like you're at a diner. It's crazy. So they would just prepare whatever and bring it over. Usually they'd put like your bib number on a plate and they would just they bring it over to you. So when I was at an aid station, I treated it like whatever my stomach would allow me to eat, I would eat. So, and if I was going to sleep, there was one, I think, night I ate 2 burgers and a hot dog and then went to bed. That was the thing I read too, was just like, why not front load a ton of calories before you're about to go to sleep, right? Because it's just like, then you're digesting while you're sleeping.
Wow. And then when you put your goals together for the race, right? Like this was brand new for you. How did you come up with what your goals were? Obviously, like the positive like emotions and those feelings and everything, like that's going to be with you for every race. But like when it came to like the time specific or aid station specific, getting from one point to another, like how did you identify those and what did that look like?
Yeah. I kind of chunked it out. And as I started to learn more about the course and read the descriptions and saw some of the videos and just, I think tapping into what, your strengths are, right? Like I know for me, I can power hike with the best of them. I promised myself I would run the runs no matter what day it was. If I could run it, I was going to run it. And I'm just not a good downhill hiker, runner. And I just don't feel confident. So I knew if a section had a lot of downhill, I wasn't going to make up time there. I had to really rely on my power hiking. So I really just took it section by section, looked at the profile, looked at, the overall gain, the overall descent, and just kind of guesstimated my pace. And then I kind of looked at that off of some other people had posted their pace charts from previous years. And I kind of looked at what I thought I could finish in, looked at what they finished in, and just kind of adjusted. So really was just like a couple of weeks of really just myself and my coach looking back and forth on, okay, this section looks like you can make some good time. What does good time mean, right, in the 200? So it was anywhere from a pace of like, 15, like averaging like 4 miles an hour down to, there was one section that had a lot of like just 7,000 feet up for 15 miles. It was crazy. So that one I was just like, if I can keep up 2.5 miles an hour, I'm going to go with that. So it almost switched over from like, right, like a hundred where you're like, okay, I know I can hit 10-minute miles here or power hike 14-minute miles overnight. It became how many miles per hour am I covering? So that was kind of more like the mind shift was like, am I 4 miles an hour or am I 2 miles an hour for these sections? And that's kind of how I broke up my spreadsheet. And then I just kind of added in time that I thought I was going to be at aid station. So if I knew if I was by myself, I'm like, okay, I could probably get all my things done in like 15 minutes. And then as the race went on and I started to see my crew, like I'm a little bit of a chatter at aid station. So I knew once I was seeing my crew that I was going to probably take some more time. But I also knew for me that was like an energy boost, right? Like if I can see them and I can talk for a little bit and feel like a real person, it was worth it to me to kind of spend the extra 10 minutes. So maybe with my crew, I was there for 25, 30, planning that. And then any of the sleep stations, I kind of expected to be there for 2 hours. And then that's where like, and I'm happy to share my Bigfoot spreadsheet with you, just so you can kind of see it. Like I had like it was almost like a live working spreadsheet that my one crew captain had on her phone. So when I came in, she would adjust the time in, she would punch in the time that I stayed there, and then that would adjust the time, she would punch the time out, and then that would adjust everything, like going down to help with the crew kind of gauge when they need to be at the next spot. That was kind of how I thought through it section to section, knowing we're at the first section of Cocadonia, you might be going a little slower to kind of like conserve. It's going to be hot, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then, I've heard like that descent down into Jerome it doesn't look gnarly, but it's supposed to be pretty wicked. So it's like, okay, maybe you adjust there. Right. And then, just kind of like adjusting based on, okay, well, now I'm going to be on day 3 legs. Like, how is that going to feel? So I was probably a little conservative, but I took it as like, what miles per hour do I think I can cover? How much time do I think I'm realistically going to spend at these aid stations? And then guesstimating sleep. Like I was going to sleep 2 hours each night. The first night I felt great. I only slept 90. Second night I needed it more. So I took 2.5, so I kind of like thought about 2 hours each. And then my crew kind of would like almost let me know once I got to see them every time. Then like from night 2 on, it was like, no, we're going to give you 3 hours. Like you look like you need it, that kind of a thing. But that was kind of how I chunked out the time.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the sleeping. How did you feel after taking a 2.5 hour nap? I would have actually thought you would have slept longer, but I haven't done a 200-mile race.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I mean, that was the one thing that's just like you don't practice, or I didn't practice before I went. I mean, I've always felt pretty good at kettle, overnight or 100 overnight. So I was like, okay, well, I was worried I wasn't actually going to want or need to sleep the first night. I knew I was going to be just super jacked to like pick up my best friend was like my first pacer to jump in, and so I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to pick her up and just have a buddy now. But I thankfully like was like, let's at least just lay down and hope that I can sleep. And actually, I don't know if you've read the same thing I read, but it was like, even if you close your eyes for like 90 minutes and just really try to zone out, like meditate even a bit, like even if you don't fall asleep, your body still thinks you've rested a bit. So even just if you can force yourself to kind of lay there and have your feet up, right? It's just a good reset for your legs. Like I'd put my feet up, I'd throw some CBD on my feet, and just like lay there. And thankfully I was able to fall asleep every night. But even if you can't, like not to panic, right? Like it's like there's been studies that say, hey, even if your body thinks you've rested a little bit. So, and then I think it's kind of having your crew know the signs that you maybe need more sleep, right? If you're like, I never had any hallucinations, which I was kind of bummed about. I kind of wanted to have something. But my coach was like, no, it's a great sign. It was like, you slept as much as you needed, right? Because usually it's like, if you're hallucinating, if you're just like, kind of like more out of it than you normally would be, like during that part of the race, and your crew is probably like, hey, you need to sleep. Like, do you plan on having different pacers, or are you going solo with just crew? Or
Yeah, I will. I'm still kind of working through some of that. Unfortunately, I need to get like one more pacer in there. So
okay,
I'm working through that right now. But I don't know like when I want to pick up that first pacer. I'd be curious of kind of like how you approach that. Like I've thought about like trying not to pick anybody up until after that 100-mile mark, just to keep people fresh and just to be able to like
Mm-hmm.
kind of get through that. I know that back half is going to be pretty gnarly. Like once you get into like that Sedona area and on
Mm-hmm.
just knowing what that looks like. Yeah, so like how did you approach that from the pacer perspective? And did you try to like as soon as you could get them like ride that out, or did you try to like save it and hold it? Because for me, I think it's almost like I'm thinking about it in the same way that I do like listening to music. So I try not to
Yeah.
listen to music, right? Like, but then it's like that secret weapon when it's like, oh, I need it, and all of a sudden I just get this massive boost like the last 20 miles or 10 miles of 100, right? And that's kind of how I'm thinking about my Pacers right now, but I don't know that that's the right approach.
I mean, so I think the way mine worked out too, so like I could pick up a pacer essentially my first night, and then that next day was supposed to be just the best views of the course if you hit it at sunrise. And so I was like, how cool if I could share this with like my training buddy, my best friend, who's like been a pacer through all my experiences. So I think that changed my thoughts. Because same, it's like you only have so many people, and this is a long way to go. But I think because I knew that section was coming up first, I wanted to share that with her. I think if it had been just like, sure, it's going to be beautiful, but not this like epic thing, I might have tried to push to maybe same like now at least maybe 60, kind of that next big aid station. But I think because I had that, I wanted to share that with her. But I think going forward, like as I'm just even kind of trying to wrap my own mind around like pacing for Cocodona for next year, like it's 50 more miles, right? And so yeah, kind of trying to balance people's the load on people. I think I probably would try to wait a little bit, but because this is your first, I would say talk to your pacers, have them be real with you. Like if there's somebody you can kind of be like waiting in the wings in a
Yeah.
way, right? That if you're, if you're in a mental state or anything has just felt a little bit more than you thought it would at that point, it might be worth it to pick up the buddy. It might be a game changer. So I love the idea of like hoping to get to 100, but
Yeah.
having somebody kind of in the backups. Cause like I ended up having the way my pacing worked out, I ended up having like another section after I'd already had a pacer where I was solo, but I knew it was going to be during the day. It wasn't a challenging section. So I think worst case too, you might want to even look like, okay, if I pick up this person earlier than I think I'm going to, what other section might I be able to tackle alone if they were maybe going to do that one, but now they're popping in early, right? If it's like an easier
Right.
section during the day where maybe it's not as long either, like it's like it might be worth it to toggle that person just in case, right? Mentally, you might need the buddy. If not, maybe you've already matched up with a couple other racers and you're like, I'm feeling good and we're going to help each other get through this stretch, but it might not hurt to have it as a backup.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that was one of my concerns too, is like once I pick up a pacer, then if I don't have a pacer, that would be super defeating, like mentally of just like, I'm back in the like, yeah, okay. So that makes sense. So you did experience that and it wasn't too bad.
It wasn't great. I mean, I definitely
Yeah.
was like, oh God,
Yeah, yeah, okay.
this was not as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But I also knew too, I was like, okay, if I'm really bad, I can put music on. And also I was like, you can get through this one stretch because from here on out, you have somebody. So like, you know, things are going to be hard. You run a bunch of your long runs by yourself, just pretend you're in that scenario. So it's just like overcoming that like hurdle. But yeah, I was able to get it done. Like it's not going to be great, but I wouldn't have traded having my friend pop in when I knew I could get her that first night either. So yeah.
So I'm super curious, right? Like big
Mm-hmm.
45,000 feet of climbing. Um, and you live in Chicago. So like how did you train for that? And like how did you get your body used to that? And then because like you can do like the treadmill stuff too, but then like the technicality of a course versus right being able to get the climbing or the descent, but then it's that added complexity of what you're running on. So like how did you prepare for that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do a ton of treadmill hiking. Honestly, I asked my coach because she lives up in Vancouver, so she can roll out of her bed and is like, "Oh, I'm on a mountain," and she
Yeah.
knows I'm here. And I was like, "Should I be hiking more on the treadmill, more inclines?" And she's like, "Honestly, for our perspective, she was like, I don't think you need it." So I'd get up to Kettle and I would purposely pick routes that I knew had the best vert we could get for the Midwest, and I would just have certain key like back to backs where it was like you want to get this amount of vert in this run, this amount of vert in that run. But I mean, again, for here, you know, like I couldn't even come close to what we were going to get out there. But I knew for myself that like power hiking was my secret weapon. Like I can power hike all day. So I wasn't, don't get me wrong, I was worried. Like I was nervous, but I was more just kind of getting my legs strong and ready for the downhill so that they wouldn't trash me, so that I couldn't even power hike, if that makes sense. So I definitely had some key runs where I had goals of like, you want to hit 5,000 feet today or whatever. But then from there, it was really just, you know, working on the leg strength to handle the downhills, because that's just not my strong suit. But I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I remember getting out there and just even like getting off the plane and like, wow, like this is going to be wild. But I think because you're taking it section to section, it doesn't feel as daunting as it might even in a 100-miler to have that kind of, you know, like to think about like an Ornery, right? Like it's, you know, what is it, like a 2-day cutoff or something, or even like a Leadville. I think it was just like, okay, well, climbing is my strong suit. I'm just going to hold that in my back pocket and hope that it holds on, holds on this course.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the gear. So you would have had a pack with quite a bit of stuff in it. How did you figure that out, and how did you get used to carrying that kind of weight?
Yeah, so that's actually what we did do a lot more of. So I would she's like, I don't care if you're on the treadmill, but we did a lot of like, I put all the things in my pack, or I bought some of those like weight pouches you can get on like Amazon. And so I would load it up. I kind of guessed my pack would weigh 15 pounds. And so I would just load it up to what seemed like 15 pounds. Water is actually a great extra weight too. So I just throw more water bottles in and stuff, and just would do my power hikes around the neighborhood with my pack on, just to get used to carrying all that. And then I had like 3 key weekends of like back-to-backs. I wore my full pack. Like I would have practiced for the actual race, like not weight things, like literally putting things in where they're going to be for race day. So I knew exactly where, you know, things would be. So that's kind of how I practiced with the pack. I'd always used a Salomon, a smaller one for the hundreds, and I just bought the 12-liter for the 200. And it just took a couple of goes to kind of figure out, where do I want everything to live? You know, how can I get everything to fit in here? I actually kind of retrofitted like a bungee on the back of it to be able to like just easily put a jacket there as well. Yeah, I would just say, you know, between now and race day too, like if you haven't really figured out where everything is going to live in your pack, like now's the time. And pack it, unpack it, pack it, unpack it. Because it's like you want it to be fast. And definitely like Michelle, for you, like when you guys are all get together before he starts, like also kind of really learn where the puzzle pieces all fit. Because it's like it's a puzzle.
Yeah, that's a
good
good
to know.
idea, because different water, bladders are all different. You know, like I'll definitely need to know how to use that. That's good advice.
Yeah, so I
Was
ended
there
up being able to
something?
keep oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you go.
I ended up being able to keep all the stuff in my bag, like in my pack, and then just be able to fill up the bladder without taking it out. That I figured out was a time saving, but depending on the pack you have, you know, you might need to take things in and out. So I ended up putting like everything of gear in a Ziploc bag and almost making it like a vacuum seal, like burping out all the air, tightening it tight, and then putting all those little Ziploc baggies in a gallon and really tying that. And then so like that way, if anything in my back of my pack had to come out, it was one big Ziploc. And then could fill the bladder or whatever from there. But that was kind of how I did the mandatory gear, if you will. It was like everything had a little Ziploc that I just kind of aired out, and then I put it in the gallon and then shoved that in there. And then also it made everything waterproof because it was in the bags. So
What was the most used? What were you really happy that you brought along?
poles, 1,000%. If you haven't been a poles fan yet, poles and the 200 are like your best friend. And also for that course, for me, I've never used a water filter before, and that was like a game changer to be able to grab some extra water. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, and a sun shirt. Oh my God, I've never used a sun shirt either until practicing for Bigfoot. I was like, it just seems so counterintuitive, right? To like wear sleeves and the hood and all that, but I was so happy I had one. And I barely I mean, this is maybe not the greatest, but like I only run with it in one run. And I was like, well, it looks like it's gonna be hot now. It's all exposed the first day. I'm just gonna wear it. And I was so happy to not have to worry about SPF. So those 3 things for sure.
When you so one of the things that like is just in my mind constantly with this is I know how I feel after a 100 miler, right? Like I know that feeling that like next morning or even as soon as you're done running, you sit down, somebody gives you
Yeah.
something to eat, then you try to stand up to walk to your car, right? And you're like, oh, legs don't really work, but they were working like 10 minutes ago.
Right.
I just envision like that same thing in this where you like get to an aid station, you sit down or you take the nap, whatever. And then does it feel the exact same way as it does after 100 you're just like running with like peg legs or like what is that like?
I know I was like you. I was just like, how in the hell is this gonna happen?
Yeah.
I will say I felt better than expected just sitting in an aid station and eating and then getting back going. That didn't affect me too much. Getting up from the sleeps each night got progressively just like I looked like the Tin Man.
Yeah.
And you can ask my crew. Like once my husband got there, like he was tasked with waking me up because it was like the saddest task apparently because you're just having to wake this person up who's barely getting any sleep, and then you have to watch them get up from the bed, which is not great. But I will say, like I knew I wasn't going to run right away, so I was like, okay, let's just hike this out. But I mean, I probably looked like a hunched over old person, like 90-year-old man that has like scoliosis. I was just like hunched over on my poles. But once you kind of got the blood flowing and like you're chatting and you're kind of moving, it did like get better. I promise. So just give yourself like I gave myself like, okay, if I have to, depending on what the section is, if I power hike an entire mile before I can really get my legs under me,
Yeah.
that's okay. I was like, there's no, I didn't stress about it. Even if I got up and it was a section I could maybe have run in, it was going to be a power hike just to wake up.
Gotcha.
What about your watch? Because you need to go so many miles per hour, and my watch won't last that long. How did you manage? Did you have a couple watches? How'd you manage that?
So I have a Koros, which does have the great battery life. And that was the one hiccup. I remember to charge my phone every night when I was sleeping, and my watch, I was like, let's let it ride. It's a Koros. It's going to be great. So I got to literally like almost on the dot 48 hours. And my watch was like, I looked down and it's like, congratulations on your run. And I'm like, oh no, like what? Battery dead. And like how exciting it would just be to have like the full 208
Yeah.
on your, I was like, ah. So I had that little freak out moment with my pacer, and I was just like, oh, like this sucks. But I had a charger with me, so I just it was like it's gonna be what it's gonna be now. It's kind of like the first scratch in a new car. You're like, well, okay, now I have a scratch. So I just took off the watch, hooked it up to my vest, and just charged it fully to the next spot, which it charged pretty fast. But that being said, I would have the routine of charging your phone every time you have a longer stop and charging your watch. And you can just leave it running. Like once I learned that, like you can just take it off, plug it in, and like be sleeping. And you might wake up and notice it's gotten some bonus mile, like half mile for you, which is super weird. But it will work to charge it on the go. Or you could just
Yeah.
literally, hang it on your vest and charge it to a charger. But yeah, I would definitely plan on charging your phone and your watch every night. Not like
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
That has been one of my things. It's funny you asked that, Michelle, because like I've been thinking about like I want to see the full 250 at the end in there, and I'm like, there's no way it's gonna last that long. And I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if it would shut off when I started trying to charge it because I've never been like in a workout and tried to charge it. So it's good to know that it will continue to go.
Yeah, you might want to give it a test shot with your specific watch, like do a run weirdly, charge it, like let it go maybe pretty low and
Yeah.
then see what happens. But yeah, I know mine was fine. I just, even my crew was like, why even not think about but they're like, you have a Koros, it's good. But it's like, it's been great for 100, but it's not going to make it 4 days. And I also didn't want to adjust. I should say I had it on like full normal settings too. I know you
Okay.
can put it in like super ultra mode and all that, but I was like, I just wanted to be able to see all the things. So that was my bad. I should have charged every night.
Was it accurate as far as
Yeah.
mileage and stuff?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, for me, I only look at heart rate when I'm out there. So the only couple of times I would switch over to look at mileage was if I thought I was getting close to an aid station, I just kind of wanted to gauge. For me, I'm like, I don't want to know where I'm at. You kind of know enough of where you're at when you get to the aid stations, and I was like, I don't want to know that I'm 41 miles in versus 48 or whatever. So I just usually looked at heart rate and time of day, but I would check, and with any trail run, right? And like what I feel like with these, definitely don't get give yourself like a 2 mile buffer on either side of what they say. Like if it's like a 15, it could be coming up at 13, it could be coming up at 17. So like it's way more kind of off from, like I feel like with kettle, it's like, oh, at 7.5, you're going to be here. And it's pretty darn close. I feel like as it goes farther, it was definitely like that messed with me a little bit as I was getting towards the last day and a half. I was like, I know we should be at this aid station. It's like, Katie, no, you also know it's trail and it's 200 miles. It's going to be, there could be 2 miles of play on either side. So just not to get like down on yourself. If you're like, oh, I'm expecting this aid station, where the hell is it? It's coming, but it could be longer on your watch than you think.
What, the night before the race, what was that like?
Well, it was like probably like what you'll have to do, like, right, go to like the check-in and all that. So that was cool. Like just to be, like all those things you've been picturing, right? Like that you're going to experience, like getting to the start and like doing the gear check-in and making sure they got the course on your phone and like seeing other runners and all this. And like checking with medical, you're like, what? This is all just such wild stuff. And so like that was super cool. And I was like really pumped. Like that was like the opening the email and being like, yes, I'm doing this. And then we got back to the Airbnb and it all started to just like sink in. And so I was just like, just kind of sitting there, and all my my friends are like, are you okay? And my daughter's with me and she's like, are you okay? And I just started crying. I was just like, I think overcome by one, just being so grateful that all these people like had taken this amount of time off to like help me and be there and support me. And also two, like, holy crap, I've chosen to do this and this thing is happening tomorrow, whether I'm ready or not. So I just kind of like let the emotions happen. And then, just kind of tried to like go through my pack one more time, double check I got everything. At that point, you've dropped the bags at the headquarters, so your drop bags are in their hands. And just try to enjoy like a relaxing night with my crew. Once I kind of had my emotions come out.
Did you get any sleep?
I did. I did not get as much as I wanted. But I feel like I never do. Like I honestly, like before every big race, I'm just sitting there like, but I think I got, and I actually didn't check. I'd recommend that too. Don't check what sleep you got. It's not going to be
7 sleep score.
Yeah.
Great job.
Exactly. Yeah. So I didn't have my ring. I didn't have my ring on. I didn't open Koros. I was like, I don't need to know. But I will say I did end up sleeping. I had like, I always have like a glass of wine just to kind of help mellow out. So that might have helped me too.
Yeah. So, like as you got through the race, you crossed the finish line. What is that moment? There's a lot of excitement. For me, sometimes crossing that finish line, though, there's almost like a sadness. Like it's like that. It's just like this is done. What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I had thought about every section of that race for so long, and it'd been my, if I wasn't working, if I wasn't sleeping with anybody else, I was like nose deep in my binder, like it was all consuming in the best way, in like this feels so good to have like such a cool thing to be immersed in. And I remember just getting, kind of like how for Cocodona, you kind of go down, like you're back into town, you're going down the road before you make the turn. And so I'm on this road with my best friend, and I pictured this moment, like I've made it here. And I started crying. I was like, I cannot believe we're in this last stretch and we're running. This is wild, And she was like, okay, that's wonderful. You could have your moment, but like, let's get closer to the finish. And then kind of like, for Cocodona, we make that turn and it's just like, holy crap, you have like those moments to kind of take it all in. Like Bigfoot, we finish on a track. And I just remember getting to the track and just like same, like I was so overcome with emotion of both like, oh my God, you've pictured this moment and now you're here. And also like this insanely epic, wild, once in a lifetime adventure is over, so kind of wanting to like go in reverse almost for a second, and like even all the hard moments, like just being so like, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, like all that pain, all the, the highs, the lows, like I immediately knew I want this again. Cause it was just, it was so epic. Like it's literally, I'm so excited for you. I cannot wait to like hear all about it because I'm telling you, like there was something so magical about being out there for so many days in nature with your people and being like after I will have to chat after you get done. This is gonna be so exciting. But like I remember after like that first night's sleep and getting up the next day thinking, this is all I have to worry about.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's nothing else I actually have to worry about in the entire world. I just have to move my body forward. Like now I get to have a pacer and a buddy with me. And like, even if stuff's hard, like this is it. Like, this is all I have to worry about. It's just moving forward and like eating some food here and there and making sure I drink water. Like having that, like everything simplified was such a cool feeling. And my pacers kind of felt that too. Like my whole crew was like, this was such a different experience from anything else. That's just like, this is all you have to do and it's obviously it's still a grand task, but it's like, there's no real world stuff at all. Like, it's just you and this awesome community and everybody who's running it and everyone's crew is all just trying to get their people one step further, one step further. And so it was a really, that was almost like the harder thing to come off of, was like getting shot back into the real world of like, this stupid stuff doesn't matter. Like that was what's matter, that experience is what mattered. So
Yeah, I've heard, on the podcast and things we listen to, I've heard a lot about like when you run 100 miler, it does like change your perspective a bit, but it's not necessarily as like life changing. It like kind of change your perspective, but not your life. Whereas like a 200 like can change your life. Like is that kind of how you feel about it as well? Like having done both and multiple 100 milers?
yeah, I mean, don't get me, I was blown away with the first one. Like I'm sure, you're just like, whoa,
Yeah.
100 miles. Like, there's people too, I think like the average person at least has sort of maybe heard of like Western States by now, or, they heard about the Barclay. So like the 100 miler just seems like more of society has heard of it. And so you're like, oh, wow, like I'm one of those people now. And then with the 200, it's just like, because it's so many days and you're through so much. And I think you bond with those people that are out there that experience with you so much, like not only your crew, but like the other runners, and the aid station, like everybody is this like one little small tight knit community of just like awesome energy that it does. It transforms you into just being like, wow, okay, like the world is really awesome in these moments, and like the things that you didn't think you could do or overcome become so much different, it's almost like I'm going to be interested to see how you feel, how I feel, how I didn't like feel coming off of this experience and doing like 100 miler. Like, will that experience feel different because you've gone further? I don't know yet. But yeah, it's almost hard to put into words just how the experience has changed me for such like a better, and everybody, like my daughter, my husband, like my crew, everyone was like, wow, I just feel like better after this experience. Like we all got tighter, because you're just living out of cars and running for 4 to 5 days.
Did any of your crew get inspired to go sign up for a 200-mile race
No,
afterwards?
no, no, no. My best friend is like, let's do it again, but you're gonna be the one to sign up. I'm like, okay. But
How
yeah,
many
it was
miles did they end up running each?
so my best friend Jamie ran, I think it was almost like 64 total over the few days. So she ran the most with me. And then my next pacer ran around a 50K, I think. And then one of my crew captains actually ended up jumping in for a section that wasn't expected, which was a delight. Becca, Becca. So she ran an 18-mile stretch with me, and then I had another friend run 15. I think that's how it all chopped up. So I would try to kind of do like pacer, 2 section break, pacer, 2 section break for them. Like, so that each pacer would have 2 other sections of break between them running again.
Wow. So just kind of as we start to wrap this up a little bit, like what advice would you have, whether like for me or anybody that's approaching their first 200 or thinking about it, like as you reflect back on your experience, what's the biggest takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like we were talking about how the 100, is like an experience, and then the 200 is like life changing. I heard this a bunch too, like with 100 milers, you have to want it. With 200 milers, you have to really effing want it. Like you do. Like there will be moments where you just have to want to get forward more than you want whatever is currently in your brain, whether you'd want to sit, whether you're worried about a niggle that's popped up or your foot, like you have to want moving forward so much more. But I feel like I know you do, like anyone who kind of is signing up for this, like you want to have that full experience. So just remembering that. So I think I kept coming back to like being so grateful for being able to be in this experience, like even if things were hard, like I'd look around and be like, but look where you are. Like you're not at your kitchen counter, you're not in Chicago, you're in this amazing setting that's like nobody else gets to be on those trails, right? Except for like you all doing this race. And so like I kept coming back to like, whether it maybe sounds corny or whatever, but like positivity and gratitude just to be out there and to have my people with me. So that those were my big, like if I was starting to kind of just get into like a funk, I would let myself kind of have the moment, like not push down all the negative stuff, right? Just let the moment happen and then just like take in the beauty, or just like remember like, I always have my pacers go in front of me. So like looking at my pacer and just being like, wow, I feel so lucky that I'm in this experience with them. So I think, yeah, even if things get hard, like knowing you can do it and wanting to see that finish, like thinking, don't take out of your brain that like turning the corner and seeing that arc and knowing that that's going to be you. You just have to take it like aid station to aid station, So that was, I think, the biggest thing too. I know for hundreds they talk about that. For this, it was like, okay, I'm not even thinking about what day I'm on. I'm thinking I'm this section to this section. And I would have little mini celebrations. Like the first aid station I got to, I was like, I made it like the first checkpoint. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now I just have to think about the energy between now and the next checkpoint. Cool. So like really separating it out in your head. And for me, that helped to just have it on heart rate. And then also just like, I promised myself, if I can power hike, I'm going to power hike. If I can run, I'm going to run. And it's okay to be cautious on the stuff that I don't feel great on. That was just like the promises I made to myself. And then take care of your feet. Take care of your feet, take care of your feet, take care of your feet. It's worth every bit of time. I have never taken care of my feet so much in my life. And my feet, they didn't look obviously awesome, but they looked better than they have after any 100 I've ever run. But I really think it's because I took the time at every aid station to, I had like a little pack, like a travel pack of baby wipes in each drop bag, cleaned off my feet, let them dry out, re-lubed them with this run goo stuff, and then did my Injinji toe socks. And I pre-taped toes that just are problems for me. So like my big toes are problems. My crew has actually named blisters on my big toes before because they've been so big. So I knew that was a problem. So I practiced some pre-taping. I taped my heels with some Luco tape. And and I would like inspect it every aid station. Like, how does the tape look? Does the tape look like it's going to hold to the next one? Cool. Just lube and put it on. If the tape looked iffy, I took the time. I did have those all pre-cut. I took the time to just, clean off the feet, re-tape the tape, and then go on. But the foot care was seeing how some other people's feet were at these aid stations, like at the halfway point, you're just like, how are these people going to keep going on these feet? I'm like, my feet have looked like that at the end of 100 and I can't walk except for sandals for a month, So foot care, and eat. When you can eat, because if there's a spot where you can't eat, yeah.
Yeah, I guess like my last question would be, I think ultra runners in general are wired like very uniquely. Like all of us, we all have like different backgrounds and different everything, but there's something at our core that's just so similar across everybody. And I'm not a part of that like 200 miler community yet, but it's one of those things where just like training for it, it's interesting for me to think about like, what is my why for wanting to do this? And like, because like these training runs and these like massive weeks, like it's such a grind and training that even for me, like having not done the race yet, like knowing my why is what's pushing me through those weeks. Like I'm curious what your why was and like what is it inside of you that said I need to do this, and like what fueled that.
Yeah, I think it stemmed from like those two things we talked about in the beginning, right? Just like putting the thought in my head and I could not get it out, and then just waking up to the possibility of like, if you if I really believe in myself that anything is possible, I put the work in, like, why not tackle this? Like, why not try? And as soon as I saw like truly like the beauty that I was going to be immersed in for this course, I was just like, I want to see all of this so bad that it's worth the weeks where you're just like, oh my gosh, I forgot I still have 20 more weeks of training. You know, like, oh, I've got like this many long runs still to go. It made all those sometimes days where you don't want to wake up or you don't want to get the mileage in like worth it. Cause I was like, I don't want to get to the start line thinking, ooh, I know I could have done this. I could have done that. You know, I wanted my training wasn't perfect, but I never gave myself an out or a pass to not get something done if I just didn't feel like it that day. Right. It was just like, I wanted that race and that experience so badly that I knew I had to put everything into training, you know, and then kind of that same thing went into once the race started, you know, like I was talking to my crew the night before, I was just like, yeah, I want this so bad. Literally, if there's ever a point where I say I'm going to quit or I'm too tired or too this, like literally do not let me. Like I want that finish line so bad. And I don't want it even just for myself. I want it for all of us. Like it's the hundreds I feel like are a team. These 200s are truly a team. Like it is us that finished. It wasn't me that finished. And like every moment that went through that was hard, or I had a problem solve something that I'd never expected to have to do or whatever, I was just like, I didn't come to the start to not figure this out to get to the finish. And I want to have the finish line for everybody who was a part of this experience for me, you know, because it was truly us, not me. It was, I could not have finished without my crew. Like I totally respect the people that do it solo, but for me, part of the experience is experiencing all those things with my people. Like those memories are going to be forever. And that was like all those little memories kind of kept fueling me to get further and further and further. And then just that finish of knowing like all the work you put in, the sacrifice, like it's worth it. It's worth it because the experience is that great.
Wow.
But I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for you. Oh my God, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for you. Oh my gosh. I wish I could be there.
Less than
Katie,
4 weeks.
yeah, Katie, that's really inspiring. You almost have me like going, maybe I should do a 200 mile.
Yeah.
I love how you describe it. And I mean, I feel so much more prepared to help Kaleb out with all your great advice. So thank you so much.
Oh, for sure. Well, I mean, anything honestly like that I can share. I know it's not the same course and you know, it's definitely different challenges, but anything after this that like is just helpful, I'm happy to throw over. That's what I think is just, I love the ultra community, but you're going to find like this 200 community is just like this extra special bubble that's like in all the other community that we're already a part of. It's such like, not only is it's going to feel like your team, right? The people that are helping you, like, and like, so you all cross that finish, every racer. I mean, I remember like, it was just not like we wouldn't do this in 100, but it's just different. Like passing anybody and they're sitting down on a rock. Hey, are you okay? Like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, are you sure? Like, do you want to, hey, come along with me? You know, like if you're having a moment or, oh man, I'm out of calories. Oh, you know, that's cool. You're almost willing to like sacrifice a little bit of whatever you need to like make sure that other person also gets forward. It's just such a cool, like humanity. I think in this world, right, there's so much just right now. It's so cool to see that little bubble of people all working together to get everybody that one step forward, you know. That was really cool. And then like after the fact, like the people you meet now become like, you know, new close friends because you've had this bonding experience that you can't really explain it. You can explain it to other people, but you have to be there. You have to feel it. And so like those people you're going to meet on the trail and at the aid stations and all that, it's just, I'm so excited for you to have all that experience too. Cause it's just like, it's just so different from anything else, you know?
Yeah, this has been amazing, Katie. Like, I cannot thank you enough. This is like, I'm fired up. I've been fired up and now I'm
Yay!
very fired up. Like, it's so cool. And I can see like the joy just in you thinking through this as we talk about it. Like, you can see the genuine like joy that you have reflecting on all of that and all the lessons that you learned from it. It's so inspiring. And like, this has been amazing. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, for sure. Well, I mean, I think that's the things like now you're going to be so excited if you have this experience to like share what you've learned because there's so much to learn, right? And it's just like, why reinvent the wheel? Like, you know, pass it on because so many people helped me. I mean, I cannot tell you how many like crew people, like that's the thing too, Michelle. I don't know if you're on the Coconut on your Facebook group, but it's probably worth popping in. Crew was helping crew, you know, past runners were helping, me, like the girl who finished dead last the year prior. I mean, she was a wealth of knowledge for me with just like ask me anything. There was another athlete that Loretta coached, Amy up in Michigan. I had several phone calls with her. Like, I think there's so many unknowns that the community is so willing to like give back because there's so many, everybody's asked somebody a question, and so it's cool to be able to like share, stuff that people have learned before you. Cause it's just like, now you're gonna be able to share, with the next person. So it's cool.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Katie. And you got anything else to share, Kaleb?
No, I'm really excited for this. Like, yeah, I can't thank you enough, Katie, again. Like, I'll probably have to re-listen to this a couple of times. It's so much information in here. Yeah, this is great.
Awesome. Well, hey, I was excited to have you all reach out. So anytime.
Okay, thanks, everyone.
Awesome.
Good.
Katie, that was awesome.
Oh my gosh.